So again, good evening, everyone. My name is George Huynh, the Mayor's Liaison to Dorchester. I'm covering Lena Tremelli for East Boston tonight, and thank you for joining us. I'm here tonight to facilitate this statutorily required cannabis community outreach. This is an application by Berkshire Roots for expanded operational hours, sale of medical cannabis, and delivery through ZipRun to be operated at the address of 235 Meridian Street in East Boston, Mass. 02128. Before we start, I would like to go over my expectations for tonight's meeting. I know that this can be a sensitive topic. I want to make it clear that no decisions are being made tonight, and at no time will it be acceptable to be disrespectful to anyone during the meeting. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. There is no right or wrong opinion. We are here tonight to try to collect as many comments and questions for this proposal. I am not here to facilitate debates amongst neighbors or relitigate state legislation. I ask that all questions be directed toward the applicant and myself only. The applicant will answer all questions related to their proposal to the best of their ability, and I will answer questions specific to the city's process. If I am unable or the applicants are unable to answer a question tonight, we will follow up with you after the meeting to get that information for you. This is an open comment period, meaning that if you do not get called on tonight, or if you think of questions that have not been answered, all you need to do is reach out to us and we will work to get you that information. So Lena's contact info has been included on the flyer you received to attend this meeting. There will be no questions during the presentation. Once the presentation has concluded, I will again reiterate my expectations. To reiterate, this is not a debate on the legalization or morality of marijuana. That debate occurred at the ballot box, and we are here today because it was overwhelmingly supported in the city. The applicant will go through the presentation in a timely manner, and the rest of the time will be for orderly question and answer. And thank you again for taking the time to participate in tonight's meeting. I will now hand it over to the applicants for the presentation. So, James and your team, you can take it away.
Thank you, George. I appreciate everybody attending and the time tonight to go over the 3 operational changes we're requesting to the Boston Cannabis Board. I am James Winokur, the CEO of Berkshire Roots. I am joined by Liaison Toma, who is our Community Outreach, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Manager. We also have our corporate attorneys, Principal Andrea Nusiforo and Ashley Dick. And I'm also joined by Gabe Vieira from ZipRun. In case there are questions I cannot answer, I may call on any of them to help me. So tonight I want to present a quick overview of what the summary level of the requests are. I will go through each one in detail. You'll see a section called questions after each one of these requests. You can use that time maybe to jot down some questions you may have for the end. And I will try and give you as much detail as possible, but also facilitate this as quickly as we can. So let's get started. There are 3 requests that we'll go through one at a time, but just to give you the overview, we're going to start with the request for expanding our store hours. Berkshire Roots currently operates at 253 Meridian Street. We were in our host community agreement given certain hours to operate. We want to talk about how we'd like to expand those so we're on parity with the other dispensaries that have opened subsequently to our opening last July. We are a medical cannabis dispensary out in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. We would like to add the ability to service the medical community in East Boston. So the request is to add our ability to service that patient group in addition to our adult use that we currently serve. And lastly, we're going to talk about adding home delivery via a third party called Zip Run. That will allow us to get to other parts of the city where it's not as convenient to walk or take public transportation to East Boston. And we do want to mitigate any traffic concerns or parking issues. We think that will help reduce the number of people coming to the dispensary, either on foot or by car. So those are three major requests, and I'll go through them one at a time. Before I do that, let's just talk a little about Berkshire roots, so anyone on the call is not familiar with us can understand our background. We were an early entry into the Massachusetts cannabis market in 2017. We are Massachusetts-based, and we only operate in Massachusetts. So these are a group of local people who decided early that they wanted to enter the cannabis market, and it's primarily the same ownership today. We are licensed by Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission and the city's Boston Cannabis Board. So there are two sets of parameters there, the larger state regulations we have to abide by, as well as city regulations. Pittsfield is our home base. We operate a dispensary, which is the top right picture, and we do our cultivation, extraction, and a lab, all of our manufacturing in Pittsfield. The lower picture is one of our flower rooms, we call it, for cultivation. If you've never seen one, thought that might be interesting. And we have about 100 people, including about 20 in East Boston. So we're a growing concern. We're not the biggest company that you've ever heard of, but a good employer in the state, good employer in both Pittsfield and East Boston. And we believe the request today, by expanding our hours and adding medical, we will need an additional 4 to 5 people. And when we do our staffing, we are looking for people who are local, and we have quite a number of our current staff in East Boston from that neighborhood. So we're excited to be able to add more jobs to the market. In addition, our dispensary was open in Pittsfield in April 2018 as medical only, a real core of our business. Adult use was added in Pittsfield in April 2019, and as I mentioned, East Boston, we opened in July 2020 as adult use only. We are part of a system in this cannabis community that really does want to give back. I mentioned Liaison is on the call. Through the Cannabis Control Commission and our own efforts, we are very aware of our ability to help the community in various ways, whether it's through volunteerism or donations. And we have a specific program that we submit to the Cannabis Control Commission that we are responsible for executing on every year, and that is assessed at renewal time. So we want to be great neighbors. We have been great neighbors in Pittsfield and continue that in East Boston. We get a good amount of attention for that participation. Things that we've done that are unique to us, we created and collaborated with Berkshire Community College. They have an accredited program for cannabis education. We've been able to bring people from that program as interns into our Pittsfield facility and actually create jobs through the combination of education and on-job training. We extended that when we opened in East Boston, participating in the inaugural Cultivated program, bringing in disproportionately affected candidates into Berkshire Roots, again, to help people understand the benefits of cannabis and that we can be a good employer as well. So really important to us to be good neighbors, and we think we've done a good job in East Boston in our first year open. If you're not familiar with our location, the picture on the left, you see Meridian Street and Princeton Street. We're basically on the corner of those two. Circled on the bottom is our exact location at 253, first floor storefront. And then off of Princeton Street, you'll see a driveway. We have deeded access for our business, and the business is on the ground floor next to us to access the rear side of our store. The picture on the right is looking down Meridian Street towards Central Square. That is our dispensary on the left, and you can see the retail neighbors around us. So a good small business community. We've gotten to know a number of the business owners and feel really part of the community already. If you've never been in a dispensary, or our dispensary in particular, just wanted to make sure you saw, we are very proud of the manner in which we keep our store, how clean and professional it is. This is not intended to be anything other than a normal retail experience. And we think our community, we've gotten to know so many people around the East Boston neighborhood, really appreciate the manner in which we conduct ourselves and the presentation of our store. So let's start with the requests. Number one is expanding our store hours. On the top left, you'll see our current store hours. Again, part of what's called a host community agreement. This was part of getting our Boston Cannabis Board approval. So we are open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., Sundays, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. I will show you on a subsequent slide the other cannabis stores in Boston and the hours that they're open. Our proposed store hours mirror those other stores in our area. So we are asking for mostly an extension of the evening hours. So extending from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. In Sunday, earlier open at 10 a.m., but still closing at 6 p.m. So we're mostly adding 2 additional hours at the end of the day. It does match what other Boston stores are doing, including in East Boston. And actually, we are sensitive to our customers. We get Google reviews for just about anything we do. And certainly there are people who wish we were open later, demonstrated by the Google review at the bottom. We certainly prefer 4 and 5-star reviews. So to see a 2-star review simply because we can't be open later is not servicing the community the way we'd like to. So those are the reasons we're asking what we're asking for. This slide gives you all the Boston area dispensaries. Pure Oasis on the middle left was the first one open in Boston. We were the second. Their hours are 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. It was actually changed since they opened. Happy Valley, Ascend, Seed all opened after we did, and they were given hours extending into the evening. The 2 at the bottom, Patriot Care and Mayflower, are medical only. They likely have a smaller pool to draw from, so those hours probably work for them. But for those 4 upper dispensaries, really what we're asking for is parity with those that are around us, service our customers in our neighborhood the same way they're able to. So that is the store hours. Again, if you have any questions about that, want to take a second to jot them down when we get to the end, happy to answer questions on store hours. The second request is to add medical sales. As I mentioned, Berkshire Roots has a strong medical cannabis history. That's how we started in the industry. Most of our agents really do appreciate the benefits of cannabis, get to know it really well. We have a very good education program within Berkshire Roots. We actually discussed this at the original host community agreement public forum, that was our foundation, and the expectation from the city of Boston was that we would someday add medical so we could service medical patients in the neighborhood. We're already very well trusted in Pittsfield as a medical provider. We'd like to continue that reputation in Boston. I actually serve on a national board of the Association of Cannabinoid Professionals. These are medical professionals who have been educated on the benefits of cannabis and who regularly do research and or present material to groups about the benefits of cannabis and are advocates for medical patients. Really important to me to maintain that tie, be on the forefront of what we're learning about medical cannabis and be able to offer that to the community. We are in this particular area that I showed you on the picture on Meridian Street, and we would be the only medical dispensary within walking distance of the neighborhood. So we think it's important to provide access to people who are in East Boston. They may then want to get their medical card because we're there, or if they already do have a medical card, we'd be available. To get a medical card, you have to go through a process of getting a doctor's recommendation. There are certain ailments and conditions the state allows someone to get a recommendation for. You then have to apply to the Cannabis Control Commission to get a medical cannabis card, and only then can you enter a facility with your approved medical card. We do know there are benefits to cannabis for people with certain ailments and conditions such as chronic pain. And we do know from research that there are very specific benefits, for example, reduction of opioid use when combined with cannabis and or replacing opioids with cannabis. So we want to be good community members, as I said, and we think another way to do that is to provide an alternative to a very addictive form of medication and opioids. So that's our medical sales. Again, I'll give you a second if you want to jot down any questions regarding that. And then the third is to add a home delivery service. The manner in which the state has gone about adult use home delivery is to provide special licenses to applicants who are either deemed a social equity candidate or economic empower candidate. So a delivery service has a courier license, think Uber Eats or DoorDash, where a delivery company would come to a dispensary and go out to do home delivery. By doing so, as you know, with Amazon, as we all experience with COVID, with grocery home delivery, et cetera, that's a very accepted way for people now to shop. And that primarily, and you can probably guess, would reduce the number of people coming to a store. If it was a supermarket, fewer people coming to the store because now they're getting delivery. That's our expectation with adding home delivery as a service. In August 2020, the Zip Run company that I mentioned actually went through this process that we're doing now, had a public forum, and was approved by the Boston Cannabis Board to deliver in the city limits. So that's already been approved. The Boston Cannabis Board has now asked us to seek approval to add the service from the dispensary side. So we are not going to conduct delivery with our staff based on the Cannabis Control Commission rules, and we already have a partner who's approved by the city. They are a social equity applicant. They are in their final stages of the Cannabis Commission approval. Their delivery service will go through a process in order to get that final license. So they have to follow all kinds of rules in order to be in the delivery business. And they will begin with what I mentioned as a courier model, coming to our facility. This will not be conducted on Meridian. I mentioned the driveway and back that we have deeded access to. So this is out of the public view. We have security plans around how this will be conducted. Security plans have been reviewed by the East Boston Police Department, and we expect maybe 4 or 5 visits a day from the Zip Run delivery vehicle, completely away from the public, completely away from any traffic patterns. So that is the manner in which we conduct that activity. I have been actually working with Zip Run for a long time, even before I started with Berkshire Roots. A relationship I've developed with Gabe. I thought this is a great idea. I'd like to help you navigate Cannabis Control Commission, cannabis rules in general. Being a long-term business entrepreneur, wanted to offer advice. So we've had a long-term relationship. Eventually, the service will transition to what is known as a warehouse model. So instead of the courier model, at some point, delivery companies like Zip Run will be able to buy goods at wholesale from companies like Berkshire Roots, store them in their own warehouse, and then be able to pick from their warehouse, just like Amazon, and go out to home delivery. So that application process is new. We don't really know when that will happen. I'm guesstimating on the slide, maybe in a year from now, they'll be able to perform that service. So in fact, there will be a transition from this courier model to the warehouse model. And it came up in an earlier public meeting in August 2020 when Zip Run was applying for the Boston Cannabis Board approval. People were curious about the relationship between Berkshire Roots and Zip Run. It's really a business relationship. It's good for us, it's good for them. The company has no particular financial stake in Zip Run. I have no personal stake in Zip Run. We're just good business partners. They are a social equity company. I think it's incumbent upon us in the cannabis industry to help each other. And if I can help and Berkshire Roots can help get Zip Run incorporated into the larger cannabis industry, that's our #1 motivation. So just to run through real quickly the courier delivery process. So you can imagine a number of orders coming into our dispensary online. Those orders will be aggregated in time slots. So again, think about a grocery delivery or CVS doing prescription delivery. Those orders will be prepaid online. So there is a system that will allow someone to place an order and prepay. Zip Run will come to that area of our dispensary behind it. They will take a group of orders and go out to delivery. So there is no interruption to any kind of pedestrian or vehicle traffic in that neighborhood. Zip Run will not have to return to the dispensary. Because it's prepaid, there is no requirement in the regulations. There's no reason for them to return after they do their group of deliveries, except to pick up more deliveries. But other than that, it's really outbound. And when it goes outbound, you can imagine most likely it's away from the neighborhood, because people who are in the neighborhood who could walk to us are likely not going to ask for delivery. You know, there's no reason to pay a delivery fee when you can walk to the store. So the primary deliveries will be outside of the East Boston neighborhood. And again, just to stress, more deliveries means fewer customers driving to the store. And that is our expectation. One, mitigate that traffic, and two, reach areas of Boston that people don't necessarily drive to come to East Boston to see us now. So those are the three requests. And George, this is the opportunity for Q&A.
Wonderful. So first thing I'm going to do is make everybody a panelist so that we can see each other. I want this process to be as transparent as possible. And just to reiterate some expectations here, we are not really discussing any prior proposals that have been approved at this location. I mean, context is helpful, but we're here tonight to focus on the proposals presented. So again, I want to make it clear that no decisions are being made tonight, and at no time will it be acceptable to be disrespectful to anyone during the meeting. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. There is no right or wrong opinion. Again, we are here tonight to try to collect as many comments and questions for this proposal, and I understand there are pretty much a collection of 3 proposals. And I ask that all questions be directed toward the applicant and myself only. The applicant will answer all questions related to their proposal to the best of their ability, and I will answer questions specific to the city's process. And if I am unable or the applicants are unable to answer a question tonight, we will follow up with you after the meeting to get that information for you. So thanks, James, for that presentation. And we can begin taking some hands. So I see, and those calling in, you can dial *3 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself when you're called upon. All right, so we're gonna go to Laura first, and then Ricardo. So Laura, you can unmute yourself. That's a hand. There you go.
Oh, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I know you don't want to talk about previous decisions, but I just will say that going back to getting their host community agreement, part of the reason they got their host community agreement was promises that were made to the community, including their limited hours, and they're swearing upside down in every direction that they were not going to have anything to do with the driveway on Princeton Street, which is a residential block. And so there's no way that any of this can be considered without taking that into consideration. Not only that, but they had a fraudulent traffic study, which I cited the engineer who did it because he used an outdated manual with outdated data.
Excuse me, Lara, I'm going to interrupt. George, do you want to moderate this?
Can I please finish? Can I please finish what I'm saying? We had to listen to you, so please listen.
So
I live on this block. We have the little I don't know, I call them the nips of pot, the little like cylindrical containers that I guess the joints come in, or the bud. I don't know what they are, but whatever. I have no problem with pot, first of all. Let's just start that by saying this. We have constantly am finding those in the tree wells. Today, my husband watched somebody try to get into the side gate into our backyard. And then when he couldn't get into the backyard, just proceeded to take a piss on our next door neighbor's house, carrying his little Berkshire Roots bag. Your employees park on our block, your customers park on our block. We have limited parking. You have supposedly a community outreach person. The only outreach that we've seen is when we got flyered about this service that is going to happen, the imminent delivery, before it's even improved. You've been repaving the driveway before it's even approved. It's completely presumptuous, and I just can't understand how in any world you would be allowed to run a delivery service out of a residential block. Like, I don't understand what the zoning is for this. No one seems to know what the zoning is for this driveway, but I can't believe that it would be zoned commercial and allowing for a delivery service. And as much as you say that, oh, it's going to make traffic better, of course you're going to say that. That is just simply not true. The traffic is horrendous. We have people double parking and parking like idiots all the time. People are smoking in their cars, which means they're driving stoned, which, as someone who has driven stoned when I was a child, I can tell you it's not a good idea. And this whole thing is just, it's upsetting a residential block. Like, you picked, I still can't fathom why this location was ever selected. And nobody is happy about you being there. Not a single person I've talked to on my block is happy. So I think what you need to do is pick a new location. And a comment to, I think it's Gabe that's from Zip Run. Please align yourself with a different company. I have nothing against you, but I don't understand why you are choosing to partner with a company that is so universally disliked in the neighborhood. You would be much better served working with another company in a much more practical location than being in a residential neighborhood. So that's what I have to say.
George, my response is, one, we're not going to address anything about the licensing that already took place. Number two, that area of the driveway mentioned has deeded access for all the commercial businesses on the first floor, the ground floor, including us. So that is not, strictly speaking, residential, it is commercial. I'm sorry that you're experiencing things that you don't prefer. That is not part of what we're requesting. If you are experiencing things like people double parking or people parking on the street at all, well, it's an open city. People are allowed to park, but I will reiterate the goal of delivery. We expect less people to come to the dispensary. So I would think anybody on the block or in the neighborhood would be in favor of delivery.
You know that that is not the case. This is,
Well,
I mean,
it's the case everywhere else, though.
It's such corporate spin. I mean, seriously.
No, it's factual that every dispensary in other states that adds delivery has fewer people.
Do you want to address your customers urinating in people's houses and trying to get into their yards and dropping litter all over the street and smoking pot in their
wants that. I mean, I don't want that. You don't want that. No, right. Nobody.
Would you set up shop in your neighborhood, on your block, where you have probably kids?
There's a lot of commercial businesses in the area. I imagine that other customers from other businesses do things that none of us would like.
Not to the extent that yours do. And well, I have to think
we're there, so that's not changing. This isn't a debate about whether we're going to be there or not. It's a debate about nothing. Actually, according to George's rules, there is no debate. This is just open discussion.
Okay, Laura, thanks for your comments. I'm going to move on to the next participant here. So we're going to go with Ricardo. Oops.
Hey, everyone. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thanks. Hey, everyone. It's Ricardo from Counselor Edwards' office. I'm our Chief of Staff. Thank you to everyone that's here. Don't have a lot to say. Just want to piggyback on one of Laura's points, which is that when Berkshire Roots was first going through the approval process, they specifically promised the community that they would not be using the space in the back in any way for delivery, for delivery of product, whatever. And they're obviously not living up to that promise by trying to now use that space for delivery. So that's one of the primary reasons that when this proposal does get before the Boston Cannabis Board, the councilor does intend to oppose it. So again, don't have a lot to say, just wanted to highlight that. You know, I know the councilor is disappointed that they're not living up to their promise. And
Excuse me,
because of that,
Ricardo.
because of that, she intends to oppose them at the BCB. Yeah, go ahead, James.
It's an interesting point. I've read the host community agreement. There's nothing in the host community agreement that defines our spaces not including the driveway for use.
No, there's nothing
I
in the
would
host
think,
community
excuse
agreement,
me,
and like you
Ricardo,
said,
may I continue?
Industry to open in the city, so it's a new industry. It's still a new industry. When you guys were first going through the process, it was even newer than it is now, and so I think we've all learned a lot of lessons, both on the dispensary side and the local elected official side. One of the lessons that we've learned, I guess, is to memorialize and promises that are made through the community process, such as we're not going to use the space in the back, into agreements like host community agreements to make sure that we're not faced with the situation that we are now.
So I'm confused. The driveway provides the best way to perform a number of services. This is one of them. The preference certainly is not that we perform that service on Meridian Street.
Right, and so I think what we would say is that some locations,
can I please finish my response?
For delivery.
Ricardo, I think you're being a little disrespectful.
I'm gonna let's have James finish his comment, and sure. Ricardo, you can respond after that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right.
So if the preference is that we do delivery service out of Meridian Street at the front door, please someone tell me why that's a better option. The option of not doing delivery at all would mean you don't want that for any dispensary in the city. We are probably in a rare position to have a place to do it, not through the front door on a sidewalk on a main street. So for those who are trying to help social equity candidates like Zip Run, or for those who are seeing that the business is evolving, the industry is evolving, and these kind of accommodations need to be addressed, and we have a great way of addressing it, I think it really just feels like we're trying to find ways to suppress Berkshire roots. And perhaps Zip Run.
George, can I respond now?
Yes, Ricardo, you can go ahead.
So obviously Meridian, I think everyone on this call can agree, doesn't make sense. So in terms of, okay, so if the answer is that Berkshire Roots just isn't an appropriate location for delivery, then no location in the city is. I just don't think that's true. There's locations throughout the city that have ample off-street parking. We have a location in East Boston just off Route 1A that I think most people on this call would probably agree makes sense for something.
That would be the only one. They would be the only one.
Okay, well, it's not that far away, and if even you're agreeing it makes sense, then everyone's on the same page about that. So
well, I guess I'm agreeing that you should cancel Uber Eats, DoorDash, and all the pizza delivery companies.
Yeah, I don't know how you're extrapolating that from what I said, but just wanted to make the point. Again, don't have a lot to say and want to give other people the time, but just wanted to say that the councilor is going to oppose this because Berkshire Roots is not living up to the promise that they made to the community.
It's a promise that's undocumented, so I don't know where that comes from.
Well, thanks, Ricardo, for sharing. One quick ask: if you've already spoken and have your hand raised from the time you spoke, if you could please lower your hand after you've contributed, just so I can try to keep track here of who's next. That'd be great. So I'm gonna go to caller 781-507. So you can unmute yourself, and then we can go to Tina Kelly afterwards. There you go. Also, sorry, James. Could you stop sharing your screen for a moment?
sure if I can figure that out.
just so we can view other cameras and videos.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay, great. Thank you. I would suggest that folks stop suggesting other people don't interrupt and then interrupt themselves, number one. Number two, as an entrepreneur, when someone from your community says that someone is double parking and urinating into the houses of other people, the response shouldn't be, it's a free place and it's a free world. I mean, to say that you're supportive of the community and then respond like that shows that you're not really responsive to the community and that you don't care about the community. You should be concerned about those things. You show no concern with this. Secondly, without question, through the ZBA process, when this was talked about, there was a discussion on where the deliveries would be made, and it was stated at the ZBA meeting, which is recorded, so we have proof, that deliveries had to happen outside of the driveway, and that was the agreement that you would come to. And to come back and say that you didn't agree to that, again, it's completely disrespectful to the community, and it's a slap in the face. And it just shows that you don't really care. All you want to do is do what's completely in the best interest of yourselves without contributing to the community. And I think it's fine for you to do certain things. That if you were to be able to do delivery service in the warehouse outside of the area, that's great. But don't come here and want to extend your hours and then essentially tell people to shut up when they bring up any concern. It's completely disrespectful, and I don't know how you run a business like that. Thank you.
So let me respond to number one. I never said that it's a free world. I'm not sure where you picked that up. I said we would all be concerned for anybody double parking, littering, going into other people's neighborhood. I don't want any of that. Nobody wants any of that. That was my answer. Number two, if that was...
It wasn't your answer. It was your secondary answer after you realized you screwed up.
I'm not sure who you are, but that was my answer. Number two.
My name is Jim.
Yeah.
I live on 39 Princeton Street, right down the street.
Jim, you don't know me, but there's nothing in me that would say it's a free world. I'm sure that was nothing that entered my. You
said you could park.
Okay,
but now you're taking a little. Okay, you said you can park anywhere you want. You said you can park anywhere you want, right?
So there was a concern about.
That's the point.
Excuse me, Jim. There was a concern about employees and customers parking in valid parking spaces. That was my response. Like, okay, people park to go to any of the businesses in the area. Or
what have you done? But what have you done about double parking and people urinating in the trash? What have you done proactively to help with the community to stop that? I would love to know that.
So we monitor as best we can if people are double parking. I've never been notified until tonight that people were going into other people's yards.
If you walk out the door, you'll see double parking. I mean, it's so obvious. I mean,
well, I also related
it's not a credulous response.
I also related an experience I had recently where we were notified about someone double parking. Was not someone in our store. I started walking to other stores to see if it was their customers, and that person was somewhere else, got in their car and left before we located him. Had nothing to do with our store, so that happens as well.
Well, let me ask this one. So I have a picture of the person's license plate, and I have a picture of the person that was actually urinating on the house with a Berkshire bag. I would like that person to be banned from the company, banned from ever coming back again, because that just shows a level of disrespect for the community that is unacceptable. I'll contact you and give you the information if you can do anything about it. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, again, first I'm hearing of it. We have a great relationship with the East Boston Police. We work with them constantly, continuously to make sure people we don't want in the store don't come in the store. Your other point about the driveway, again, the business evolves. It has many years to go to get out of its nascent stage. And one of the things that has evolved is delivery. The state and the city of Boston said, what a great way to get social equity companies involved in the cannabis industry. And we're doing our part to do that. The driveway is a great place to do that. I don't see it interfering with the neighborhood.
I'll just respond quickly to that, and then I'll let some other folks talk. You denied that you agreed to not use the driveway. Is that accurate?
I actually was not part of the company during that session. I have read the
That's
community
irrelevant.
agreement.
That's irrelevant.
No,
You can
if I
ask
can finish,
somebody.
Jim.
Please, go ahead.
So I was not part of the company. I was not in that session. We've talked about it as a company, and it's not in the host community agreement. So that's what I'm going by.
Okay, but you did promise it, and you can check with folks in your company, and you can check on the video within the ZBA. It absolutely did exist.
I will say, even if we did, it was probably all well-intended. The business is evolving. We'd like to add delivery service, and that is a safe, convenient way for everybody to perform that service.
It is a safe, convenient way. If you use the warehouse approach, I would fully support you.
That may or may not happen anytime soon.
Hey, thanks so much, Jim. Actually, so Nick and Robin had raised their hand earlier, or mentioned in the Q&A that they want to speak. So we're gonna go with them first, and then to Tina Kelly.
We were just hoping that we could each have a time to speak.
Sure. So you
Okay.
you can do that.
So James, one of the things that you mentioned in your presentation is how you've been great neighbors. And I was just hoping to get some specific examples of what you've done to give back to the East Boston community because, I live in East Boston, obviously, right at 13 Princeton Street, and I work in the community, and I haven't seen Berkshire Roots do anything to support our community.
Sure. I mentioned Liaison Thoma's on the line if she can unmute, but while she's doing that, I will say generally we have great relationship with East Boston Main Streets. We have volunteered for many things that they've asked for help. We've donated to East Boston Main Streets and others. I'll have Liaison, give you more of the specifics. As I mentioned, have a great relationship with East Boston Police. We have never had a complaint that they've come to us to address. More the other way around, as I just mentioned, when we ask them to help us deal with, anything that's going on in the city that concerns us. But Liaison, if you're unmuted, if you can detail our contributions to the neighborhood, that'd be great.
For sure. So like James was saying, we do have a close relationship with East Boston Main Street. Throughout the pandemic, when they were having their food distribution sites, I was going along with other employees from the dispensary almost weekly to help hand out food and unload the trucks for people. We also helped them with the Taste of Eastie Festival, and then the festival that was in Central Square, I believe it was 2 weekends ago, we helped out with financially, and then also there was the Eastie Pride weekend earlier this year that we helped volunteer with a little bit and contributed financially. We've participated in the Love Your Neighborhood cleanup event. We also did a couple other street sweeps up and down Meridian Street picking up trash. And then we do things in store like donation roundups. So like when you go to CVS or Shaw's and they ask you to round your change up to a specific cause or organization, we do that as well. And we've raised money for harbor keepers. We've raised money for the East Boston Social Center. We've raised money for East Boston Main Street, especially when they were launching EC Strong. We've worked closely with Panda Bono on the corner of Princeton and Meridian Street as well. And we're still working on expanding our outreach program too.
Okay, thank you. I know from personal experience, I've reached out to Berkshire Roots for help when we had a vandalism issue in January and heard nothing. So that is a little disappointing, especially given that we're 2 houses down. And the other thing I just want to say is, again, you're saying that you're a great neighbor, yet all these neighbors are bringing up concerns and you are just shutting us down. And you don't seem to have any concern for what our opinions are as your direct neighbors and how we're affected. And regardless of what you want for your business, if you're a good neighbor, you should listen to your neighbors, and you're not doing that.
Well, I'm happy to listen, and I am here listening. But the program started with, you shouldn't be there at all. And that is
That's
directly,
not what I'm saying.
no, you asked how we're being right now conversing, and it's because this whole session started with you shouldn't be there at all. And what George tried to express was, this is not a discussion about whether Cannabis should be there or Berkshire Roots should be there. That's done.
And that's not really my point, though. My point is that you're claiming to be a good neighbor, and all of your neighbors are saying that this is not something that we want in our neighborhood. A delivery service on our street, 2 houses down from where I'm taking my daughter in and out of my car every day, and that's not what you're listening to.
Right. Well,
And
this form
really
is for that specifically. This form is for that. So we are listening right now to you expressing your concerns about the 3 things that we're requesting.
It doesn't seem like my concerns are our concerns as a neighborhood are being heard. Doesn't feel that way.
Okay, I'm sorry, it doesn't feel that way, but that's the point of this open forum, right?
So you're saying that what you're going to do is going to change based on what everyone here thinks? Or you're just going to go ahead and do it anyway, regardless?
I'm saying we in the city are going to listen to all the discussion and requests and comments, and obviously between the Boston Cannabis Board and Berkshire Roots, figure out whether we have a path forward or not, or if we need to modify anything.
Okay. Well, as your neighbor, the next time I reach out to you, I'd appreciate a response.
Yeah, I personally wasn't aware of that. I'm not sure who you contacted, but happy to follow
I
up on it.
contacted you.
About vandalism.
Uh-huh. Yep, in January, Ricardo can attest to it.
Okay.
Thanks, George. My comment would start with, again, this idea that Berkshire Roots presented throughout the entire presentation in requesting the 3 changes in operations tonight around the fact that he is a good neighbor and they are a good neighbor, and I won't go into that anymore. I think that point has been made clear. I would ask that the city and the Cannabis Board provide to the neighborhood and to the abutters of East Boston the necessary information and the public data surrounding the driveway. All we have heard is that it's deeded to the businesses that abut the driveway. What does that deed mean? Is the deed the entire driveway? Is it public property? What is it zoned as? And how will we get multiple cars in and out of a driveway that is shared amongst the 6 different storefronts that abut it? That's not a question for Berkshire Roots. That's a question to the city and the Cannabis Board that I believe that information should be shared, since the entire operation of a commercial business is going to be done on a residential street. I think it is important to note East Boston is the most dense neighborhood in Boston, and Eagle Hill is the most dense neighborhood in East Boston. Princeton Street is one of the major entryways. There are multiple one-ways, if you're not familiar with it, into the neighborhood that is strictly residential. You are running a delivery operation, logistical services out of a driveway on a residentially zoned street. And I'm not sure if that's a Berkshire Issues or a ZBA or a Cannabis Commission that needed, but I'd ask that someone provide that information. So James, I would be curious if you could please specify, all we know right now that it'll work out of the deeded driveway. Could you provide the details on what that looks like?
Well, let me answer a question. I may have a follow-up to clarify what you're asking. The driveway is a private driveway. It's zoned mixed commercial residential.
So I have a question to follow up there. So are you working with the person who owns that driveway? Is there a joint venture in this? Because everything you've presented thus far has that it's been deeded to the business, and now it's coming up that there is another participant in this operation and that you'll be using a different lot, not just the deeded component of the driveway to your residential business?
That's actually not the way it works. So you asked if it's public. It's not, it's private. Deeded access means businesses who have access behind Meridian Street have the right to use that access point, which is the driveway. So that's what deeded access means.
Could you define how much space that is?
It's the space necessary to get a vehicle to the back portion of your store, or any of the stores along that driveway.
Where, who's defining that?
It's in the deed. So to your point, the city or whomever, Berkshire Roots, can provide, the map to show that, the zoning to show that. But to your point about, it's a residential area, it's a mixed area, right? Meridian Street
That's
abuts
not true.
Princeton, right?
Princeton Street is not a mixed area. There is the convenient store and the one restaurant. Beyond that, it is all housing. So I don't
understand that, but what I'm saying, along Meridian Street, because there's a front and a back, that back area, like if we were a store that had a loading dock, you would have to be able to access the back of the store.
You don't have a loading dock back there. So thanks for making that clear. That's not there.
But I'm just confused because you're saying
Excuse me 1 second, Ron.
Okay.
There's not a loading dock. The point is that's the type of access that a business needs, right, in the back of the store.
I guess I'm just confused by the language going on, because you're saying that there's a deeded area behind Berkshire Roots, but then you're also talking about this privately owned driveway. And so you're talking about using this privately owned driveway to get to your deeded area. Is that what you're saying?
So the first clarification was the question, is it a public space? The answer is no, it's a private driveway.
That's not
No, of course not.
Not my question.
No, that was Nick's question.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I brought up private.
That was not my
Second part
question. I was
is-
asking for the city to define the property. What is it zoned as, and what is the space that is deeded? I'll move beyond this point, and I'll end my comments with this.
Yeah.
You are asking to amend the host agreement that you have and layer in these 3 different changes in the operation. I will make it stated, just as everyone else did tonight, that is in direct opposition of the original agreement that was asked for. And the fact that you're stating I wasn't involved in that process and businesses evolve, to me and to the Cannabis Commission, is why the neighborhood and us specifically say that this amendment should not go through. And in the neighborhood process, we do not support this because they're going back on their word, and it does not make sense for an operation like that to exist in the location where they operate. Thank you.
I appreciate your opinion.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick, and thanks, Robin, for sharing your questions and thoughts. Regarding the zoning for this area, I'm not familiar with East Boston, of course, as I'm not from there. But I'll certainly let Lena know, and if she could find that out for you all, or work with the Cannabis Board to get more exact language on this, it would be ideal. Thanks again. So I'm going to go to Tina now. Tina, you can unmute yourself.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Hi, neighbors. I just had a few questions. I live right next door. I was the one in the host community meeting that asked if that driveway was going to be used. I asked 3 times to get a reassurance that it wouldn't be used. Now, someone is telling me that didn't happen. But it did, because I was the one that asked. So I'm feeling a little taken aback by that, because, you're here trying to seek community approval, but basically you're saying all of this stuff doesn't happen. And we're the assholes. Like, sorry for my language, but like, I'm so frustrated. I've never been talked to like this in a community meeting ever. It's not, you're not making friends. You're not being kind. You're not listening. I mean, I will say we had a community meeting with Panda Bono, your neighbor. It was a love fest. You know why? Because they listen. If we have an issue, we can go to them. You hide behind that locked door and you don't get back to us. I was part of the vandalism that happened on our block. And, these things that are happening are real. I have to shut my window so my kids aren't breathing in fucking weed. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. Weed. Okay? That is a real thing that's happening. So, and I know that I'm going off track here, but I'm very frustrated because I feel like I'm being disregarded. And that's not fair. I live here. I've lived here since 2008. I've raised my babies here. And now I have to explain to them, no, you can't open the window because you're hot. So I don't know. I'm feeling very frustrated. And I wanted to go back on what the use of the driveway will be. So you say that Zip Run's going to be back there. What exactly are you saying for trips a day?
I'm sorry, what do we?
For Zip Run delivery in the back driveway, how many trips a day?
Maybe 3 or 4 or 5.
So which is it? Because so 1 through 5.
We'll see how the business evolves. We're not doing any business
Okay,
now.
so you're not making any promises. You can't even explain the business model.
No, I can explain the business model. You're asking me for a specific number of trips. We'll have to see how the business evolves.
Okay, so
my expectation is 4 or 5 deliveries a day.
Is Zip Run functioning now?
No, they're waiting for their final state approval. We are the first delivery partner in the city of Boston.
Okay, all right. So and you said that they're an equity applicant.
Correct.
And that was part of your pitch, right? Like why you want to support them.
Correct.
And so who owns the company? Because the last time we checked, it was only 50% of Gabe, and then investors were the rest. So who are the investors? I think we have a right to know, like, who the real stakeholders are. Like, who's the investors in this? Are you an investor?
No, I stated that in my presentation. Neither myself personally nor Berkshire Roots is an investor in Zip Run.
Okay, and you're just doing this to be a good friend, or?
I met them, as I said, before I even started with Berkshire Roots, and enjoyed meeting them and thought they had a great business idea. And yes, as a mentor advisor, I've been helping them just to help them.
Yeah. Okay. It makes me wonder, because you keep bringing up this equity thing, when in fact the other applicant in East Boston were people of color, and someone from Berkshire Roots fought really hard to get that first license, and here we are. So I'm feeling a lot of distrust. I mean, and I think that's what everyone is feeling. You want us to support you and support what you said, local business, but your employees have New Hampshire plates. Where are these people coming from? And like, what is it with your employees smoking weed before work? Like, it's weird. I mean, I couldn't imagine like going to drink a 6-pack before walking into my office. So, I mean, there has to be more security around your current business for any of us to ever consider any kind of expansion here. The promises you did, Berkshire Roots did promise they would monitor the parking. They also promised their employees would be taking the bus and the train. They all park here for the entire day. And like, I get it. Like, it's legal for them to park there, but you're making this argument where we're reducing trips with this delivery service when your own employees are driving here. Why aren't they taking public transportation? So I don't believe you. And I think that's part of my issue, because so far, nothing you've said to me makes me feel like I want to believe you. You've been super condescending to my neighbors, the people that I love and that I've known for years. It's not fair. Change the way. I mean, you want to make friends, right? If I acted like that, my job would be fired. So, I mean, be kind. You can say all you want about, us being frustrated and saying that, oh, that's just the way the world works. That's not fair. So
Tina, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Number one, this session started with me being attacked. I take that personally. George laid out pretty clearly what this session was about. So that's what happened. Secondly, I did amend what I said. I understand that discussion may have happened not where I was present. However, I think we all have to recognize, especially obvious during the pandemic, how the world changes and how we have to try and adjust. And as a business owner, we have to try and figure out how to, do the best we can in our business. On top of that, we have the Cannabis Control Commission trying to get social equity, economic, and power candidates into the cannabis industry, and we have a way to help do that. As far as the neighbors in the neighborhood, I'm always happy to listen. As I stated, we haven't had East Boston Police or other people really come to us. I apologize if I missed something about vandalism. We had another vandalism incident that we were completely part of because we have security cameras. And we contributed to, when the Boston Police asked us, I submitted that to them.
I know that you have cameras because we actually asked for your help then. That's what Robin emailed you about, but and you didn't respond. So I think that you can say all you want about being attacked and coming on the defense, but if you're asking for things, as a business person, I couldn't understand a client coming to me and yelling at me and just being like, no, well, you said this. It's extremely immature. It is not professional. And, I don't think anybody said anything outlandish. But what did you expect? To come in and be like, oh, okay, this neighborhood loves me? I mean, I see you park your BMW and your little aviators and you go inside. You don't say hello. You don't try to talk to the neighbors. You're not like being part of the community. And I don't know if you still live in the Berkshires, but the fact that you had a sign on your door saying, bringing the Berkshires to Boston. No, we don't want to bring the Berkshires to Boston. We're proud of where we are.
Well, George, hopefully we can move on because, again, I'm being personally attacked. I don't appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, so, thanks, Tina, for sharing. I understand that this is your neighborhood, your community, and each and every one of you on here tonight is advocating for your community, right? And I understand that comes out as it can be very emotional, right? And sorry, James, that you've been experiencing, perhaps not a tone that you would like. I just ask that we all should respect each other's opinions, and make the rest of this conversation just as respectful as possible here. Thanks again, Tina, for sharing.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to Colleen.
Thank you. I just want to raise my voice and basically align with my neighbors. I live at 44 Princeton Street and have observed and experienced much of what has already been discussed and have the same sorts of questions and concerns. I too am sorry that, actually, hang on, can you, yeah, sorry. My husband's on and I'm hearing myself echo, so he's relocating. I also am sorry, James, that you felt or feel personally attacked. I think that has a lot to do with, at previous meetings, the fact that Berkshire Roots was unable to address a lot of the neighborhood concerns about parking and the residentially zoned property that you're operating out of. And also, I don't think I heard anything very personal in what you're calling the attacks. I mean, I don't know, Tina, maybe you shouldn't have said something about his aviator classes, but really, I think people have stuck to their concerns. You are hearing emotion and you're hearing anger because that's what we feel, but we're not personally attacking you. My issue, I'll raise one thing that hasn't been raised yet. Tina mentioned her kids breathing in the air from people smoking outside. I live at 44 it's pretty much a nightly occurrence now that people are sitting on the stoop, either of either our stoop or the stoop next to us, smoking pot. And I have nothing against smoking pot, but I would like for it not to be happening on my property or my neighbor's property and the air wafting into my house every night. And we have called the police many times. We've asked them to move, etc. But it's not there's been no solution. So I'd like you to be aware of that and think about how you can help us address that. And
Yeah, again, I appreciate your. Oh, go ahead, Colin.
And I will, and I just want to say, that, so far, everybody I've heard speak, we're living in that first block of Princeton Street, and it's very obvious that our quality of life here has taken a hit. And so I do hope that you will reflect upon that and be able to come back to us with some solutions, as we are your neighbors. Thank you.
Colleen, I appreciate your opening. Thank you. I am probably the nicest person you'd ever meet, so I am certainly open to people introducing themselves. There's a lot of people who want to walk around East Boston. I don't know they necessarily live there, so I don't introduce myself to people, but if you know me, certainly feel free to introduce yourself. The general idea that there are issues going on is being raised here. Again, I have not heard, barring the specific incident Robin mentioned, we do not have a host of complaints, either from the East Boston Police or generally. So now that I'm learning this, we certainly need to figure out how to address those. And I certainly will talk to the East Boston Police about how we can participate in that, because there's some things we're allowed to do and not allowed to do, given the public streets. But I'm happy to address those. And most of what you're talking about that's affecting your personal lives, ability to keep windows open or people on your stoop, this is the first time I'm hearing about it, literally.
Thanks, Colleen. Next up, we have Ed and Dave Bell and Hill.
Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Dave Hill. I live at 34 Princeton Street. And since they've opened up, for starters, I'm not in favor of any of their proposals at all. I adamantly supported them at their original meetings. When they first wanted to open up and get involved in the business, I was extremely supportive of them. However, we asked specifically that they not use that driveway. And it was a really big point that we were making as a community, that that driveway was not to be used. Secondly, I have a beautiful garden up front and I spend a lot of money on it. And it gets destroyed almost weekly by people sitting out there almost every night. Maybe the first you're hearing about it, but it happens every night. Thirdly, when I try to get parking, I've lived here for 20-something years now, and I used to never have a problem. Now, if it's before 7 o'clock at night, I drive around 8 or 9 times around the block and end up parking 3 blocks away. And I have a very difficult time navigating myself home in the dark. A very difficult time. It is not easy. Last night, when I tried to go out for a little walk, your double parkers were all over the crosswalks. I couldn't get onto a crosswalk. So there are issues that are very serious for this community, and it's really stressful. You're right, business does evolve. Sometimes you get too big for a location that you're in. And if you want to expand, you may want to look for a better location. That's really all I've got to say.
I appreciate your comments, and again, would love to be able to address things that I'm learning today. Next time I'm down there, happy to meet you and understand the layout there better. I'll reiterate in the case of adding delivery, our expectation and your expectation should be fewer cars coming to East Boston because they can now get delivery at home. That should help.
All right. Thanks, Dave. So we have some time for more Q&A. In the meantime, I'm actually going to walk through, I think Dave asked earlier that he would like to hear a summary of the city process for these applications, so I can sort of run through that right now. Let me just pull it up. All right, so let's see, I can share my screen. So this is just a basic overview. So of course, we're not necessarily establishing a business. The business has already been established. We're discussing 3 specific proposals tonight, but this is just how you establish a business. So firstly, you complete the online application for cannabis. You apply for a conditional use permit through ISD, Inspectional Services Department. You go through the appeal process, so that's pretty much what we're doing right now. My office, ONS, and the Boston Cannabis Board will work with the applicant to do community outreach. We're having this meeting. You'll create a host community agreement. If the applicant is approved by the BCB, they will negotiate a host community agreement, and once that agreement is executed, the city can schedule a ZBA date to hear the applicant's case. Then you go through the state with the CCC, and the Cannabis Control Commission, and they will be working with the city and hashing out the host community agreement, getting that finalized, and afterwards they register as a business in the city. So I'm gonna stop sharing, but what will happen after this is these this recording will be uploaded to YouTube for public viewing. It'll be sent along to the Cannabis Board. They will have their own meetings, and if there are any kind of variances that are required for relief from the ZBA, there will be a hearing date there. So nothing is being decided tonight, as we mentioned. So I hope that answers your question, Dave, from earlier. I think I just saw, so everybody who just participated, let me see. I'm trying to keep track of these hands. So I think Tina, yep, thank you. If you could lower your hand for now, unless it's a new hand. I think Laura's hand came back up, and then we can go to Robert Stubblebean afterwards.
So thank you for outlining the process. I just have a question. So basically, when they're applying for these changes, they have to go through the whole thing as if they're starting a new business. So are you saying, so they've done their online application?
No, that's
has the ZBA? No.
No, I was just outlining kind of the overview for establishing the business, as I have the information on hand.
They're already established. So where are we now? I know you said now we're in the appeal process, but does that mean they need to go back to the ZBA to get a whole new conditional use permit? And do they also need a whole new host community agreement? Like, I want to understand who are the people, who are the entities in power that are going to be making this decision on whether they can make any of these changes, so that we know who to talk to.
That's a great question. So firstly, I would just ask from James if you've received perhaps another permit or conditional use permit or a refusal letter from the ZBA at all.
So Andrea Nusiforo is one of the panelists. He can best address the process with the Boston Cannabis Board.
Sure.
Thank you, George, and thank you, James. This is a section 309. If you take a look at the BCB regulations, and I'm talking specifically about the delivery piece of this, this is well within the purview of the BCB. The BCB can grant it or not. It's got the power to do that under the regulations. So it's a 309 for delivery. For the other two, these are handled as a change of conditions. Some folks on the line may recall that the BCB established a number of different application processes depending on what the establishment wanted to achieve. This one goes through something called a change of condition. There was a public filing by us, then there was publication and notice to abutters and so forth as required. So again, because this is a change of condition applying to the store hours and applying to medical use, those two things also fall within the discretion of the BCB. Really, the BCB has the power to allow or not these particular applications.
So are there dates associated with these hearings or decisions? And is there an opportunity for public commentary?
This is that opportunity.
Well, yeah, but you're listening. The BCB is not on this call. So how will we relay our concerns to the BCB?
Well, I mean, that's a question for George, really. What I would recommend is if you have feelings about this, you communicate these to the BCB. People typically do that in writing. There may be an opportunity for you to do that in some other fashion. Again, I think you should talk to George about that.
Yeah.
Laura, to jump in, sorry to jump in, George. At the BCB hearings, they do take public testimony on the agenda items that are before them.
Okay, great. Ricardo, do you know when have either of these been scheduled?
I don't know. I can check into that and get back to you. And if I do hear anything about, if and when it is scheduled, get back to you on that as well.
Please do, because I think all of us would like to have some say in that they should listen to. So the ZBA is not involved at all in any of this. Is that what I'm understanding?
That is correct.
So everything is through. And
well,
BCB.
Laura, let me be careful about something. I'm not here to give you any legal advice. I can tell you what my opinion is, right? I can tell you what my opinion is as the applicant. And my opinion as the applicant is what I just said, which is the BCB has the power to do this either under 309 or as a change of condition. And that's right in the regs.
Has the power to do this shouldn't be a matter of opinion. It should be a fact. So can someone on the call please confirm, is it exclusively the BCB who is approving both the Section 309 delivery and the hours of medical use?
I can tell you that is the way I read the regs.
Yes, Laura, I don't have the answer right now, but what I believe offhand is since it's not really seeking any zoning relief right now, and that perhaps establishing the adult use portion of it was might have happened through the ZBA. This would just be a change of conditions, which would not require a ZBA hearing date. But that's something that I'm gonna pass along to Lena, and if she could reach out to you or vice versa, and she'll be in touch with you with a more exact answer.
I'd appreciate if that information was shared with everybody on the thread that was going around. You might not have seen it, but Lena's on a thread about this, and
Okay.
We all need to know in order for this to be a fair process. If we are allowed to give feedback, then we need to know when that is so that we can get our feedback to the right people.
Absolutely. And I asked that any comments that you might have that you want to put in writing is emailed to Lena, and you can also CC or also direct it to the Cannabis Board as well. Lena will be passing it along to the Cannabis Board, any comments you receive. So, and this video is going to be uploaded and sent to the Cannabis Board also. So.
And is the Boston Cannabis Board new since the original granting of permission? I knew we used to have the one czar, that woman who was the czar under Marty Walsh, and then there was the State Cannabis Commission. So is the Boston Cannabis Board a new institution or entity?
Folks nodding their heads.
Yeah, the council created it by ordinance at the end of, I think it was 2019.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah, the BCB was not in existence when we initially sought licensure in East Boston.
Okay, and it's an actual board. It's not one person appointed by Marty Walsh.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm all set. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Laura. I think earlier, Robert, you had your hand raised. If that's changed, no problem at all. And thanks, Ricardo, for jumping in there. And Ashley. Right, so again, nothing's being decided tonight. Thank you all for joining us. We'll take one last call for any questions and comments.
George, can I just say one last thing? I understand emotions have ran high. So just as a community member, I'd like to run through the three different asks at hand. And as a community member, just state one direct abutter's opinion. On the conditions of the extended hours, Berkshire Roots and James have mentioned multiple times tonight that one of the main reasons for a delivery operation is to reduce traffic and to reduce congestion. If that is a goal of the organization, why is there then a need to extend hours? I think it is contradicting. And we have mentioned as neighbors and direct abutters and addressed concerns regarding the traffic, the flow, the logistic layout, and that we do not see, or I do not feel a need and do not support the ask to amend the host agreement for longer hours. And of course, on condition of the delivery services, it was mentioned, I'm not sure if it was mentioned for the delivery or if it was for the hours. Other locations not far from this location, many of those locations have ample parking. I think it is important to note that Berkshire Roots does not have one designated parking spot. And there are questions at hand regarding the driveway. And it's worth to be noted that driveway is on a residential neighborhood. And so as a a residential street. So just to hit the points on the three things that are at hand, no opinions on that. I don't really have opinions on the medical dispensary. They're already in existence. So thanks.
I'd like to respond to the hours versus delivery contradiction. There are two different things. Delivery should mitigate people driving to East Boston. Extended hours should help the neighbors who are using public transportation or walking be able to access the dispensary later.
I'd just like to respond to that. Living within, I could literally walk to the store. We are familiar with the customers that come in and out of there. The amount of out-of-state license plates and the amount of increase in traffic that has come since the opening in July has significantly increased. And I do not think that this is the location or a neighborhood in which there is a need to increase hours to support the people who would be within walking distance. It's important to note as well, there are many other dispensaries in Boston that are closer to a T than this location. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nick. I see Robert has his hand raised now. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, are you able to hear me? James, earlier this evening you mentioned that you thought that people's opinions might be, that are being heard tonight might be an attempt to suppress Berkshire Roots and possibly Zip Run. I think I'm quoting you pretty accurately. Now, you weren't there at the original zoning board meeting. Many people here on this call tonight were there and remember that was a pretty heated meeting. Some of the reasons that was heated was because, and maybe somebody can comment on this, the requirements for Berkshire Roots to even be at the meeting were not met, and they did not. That was not addressed until Berkshire Roots was allowed to make their presentation. Then it was brought up that the requirements for the meeting to even happen were not met. And the zoning board meeting was called short, was called off before the single locally owned business potential competitor was able to deliver their presentation. Now, so there was no reason, there was no interest from the neighborhood in suppressing Berkshire Roots at the time. What we made were suggestions that there were plenty of other locations, even directly in our own neighborhood, that would be better than the location on Meridian Street. And a lot of them, suggestions were made that, you know, how are you going to run deliveries? How are you going to manage traffic in such a congested block, in such congested intersections? Those were our reasons back then. And there are same reasons now, the reason why we're upset about these potential changes. We were in favor, many of us, of the locally owned option because they were already running a business in a location that is completely commercial with lots of parking. So that's at least where some of this is coming from. I mean, the process was broken before we got here tonight, and we all remember that. You unfortunately weren't there, and I'm surprised there's not a representative from Berkshire Roots who was there, who can, address the fact that unfortunately we shouldn't be, a lot of us think we shouldn't be having this conversation because Berkshire Roots shouldn't be there in that location. They should have applied for and gotten approved for a different location in the neighborhood, if that's the way it could have happened. And, I am a resident, as you can imagine, on this first block of Princeton Street. And now, for the first time in 16 years in the street, pot smoke is something I smell. I don't hate it. I certainly have used pot in my life, but now I smell it all the time on the street, several times a day. Have to keep the windows closed, like other people have mentioned, have had to confront, groups of young adults on the street who are, being kind of antagonistic and irresponsible towards their neighbors as they enjoy your products. And they show no intent to stop or change their behaviors. We've called police. Police often don't show up. They did show up once that I saw. They did a drive-by, quick talking to without even slowing down the car. They never quite stopped. And, that's our experience. I don't know what kind of neighborhood you live in, James, but we live in a very urban area with a lot of pressures. And the Berkshire Roots has just become one more constant pressure, and it's tiring. These three new proposals are just going to add to those things. And while it may be simply the way businesses operate when they grow, this is simply the way neighborhoods react as they're trying to survive. So I appreciate your time. I hope you take these things into consideration. And I'm sure we'll all be involved in trying to direct these decisions in the best way for everybody. Thanks a lot.
Robert, I appreciate your comments. As you indicated with some of the specifics, again, not something that we have asked or been asked to address, but I'm happy to continue to work with you no matter the outcome of this. We want to be good neighbors. I indicated that. And if there's anything we can do to help on Princeton Street, we certainly will look at that.
Thanks, Robert. Okay, so still taking questions and comments. It's been almost an hour and a half now. All right. Last call. Going once. Going twice. Right. Don't have too much else to say. But thank you, everybody, for being with us tonight and speaking so openly about your experiences and how you feel about these proposals here, as well as previous proposals. So right now I don't think there's anybody else who has another comment. So we can adjourn. So I will let Lena know generally how the meeting went. And she will be able to view the video from tonight's meeting, and all those questions that you do have for her, please feel free to send that to her. I'm also going to leave my email address in the chat here, just in case you had some specific questions for me just about tonight's meeting. And I can help in any way that I can. So it's george.huynh@boston.gov. That's HUYNH. Right. So thanks again, everybody, and have a good evening. And thanks, James and John and everybody from your team.
Thank you, George. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for attending.
Take care.